Welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Veronica and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please check below to see if you've subscribed to our channel. It's 100% free and just allows our stories to pop up on your feed more often. Astra's ears perked up at the commotion outside her cell. Through the transparent door, she watched as four correctional robots dragged a struggling figure across the pit. Even from this distance, she recognized the species immediately. A human. A soldier. The robots, with their gleaming metallic bodies and expressionless optical sensors, handled him roughly, two of them restraining his arms while the others guided him toward an empty cell directly across from hers. "Stop manhandling me, you oversized toasters!" the human shouted, his voice muffled by the thick, transparent barriers. Astra couldn't help but smile. Most new arrivals knew better than to antagonize the correctional robots. This one clearly hadn't learned that lesson yet. She watched with interest as they shoved him into the cell, the door sliding shut in front of him. The human immediately rushed to the door, pounding his fists against the transparent material, before eventually giving up and slumping against the wall in defeat. Another prisoner for the pit. Another soul to watch the slow passage of time in this Zodarian hellhole. She remained by her cell door, studying the newcomer with curiosity. Humans were rare in this sector of space, and rarer still in Zodarian custody. The Zodarians typically avoided conflicts with Earth diplomats, something about humans being unpredictably aggressive and diplomatically troublesome. This one must have done something particularly offensive to end up here. It might be fun to explain to the human why the prisoners called this place the pit, she thought. If the robots ever gave them a chance to interact, that is. The Zodarian high-security prison was a miracle of engineering and a nightmare for its inhabitants. Constructed as a massive circular tower, transparent cells lined the inner walls like honeycomb, facing inward toward a vast empty space, the pit. When standing at your cell door, it was impossible to see either the ceiling far above or the ground far below. All you could see were the other cells across the way and the all-seeing eye. That's what the prisoners called the prison's central AI, a giant mechanical eye attached to a serpentine tentacle that extended from somewhere in the distant ceiling. It constantly patrolled the pit, slithering between levels, its unblinking gaze sweeping over the cells. When a prisoner died or became disruptive, the eye would direct the correctional robots to open the door and remove the offender. "What are you doing by the door, Astra?" A scaly head poked over the edge of the top bunk, interrupting Astra's thoughts. Her cellmate, Cordelia, a reptilian with green scales and two dark eyes, stared down at her suspiciously. "Don't tell me your species finds humans interesting," Cordelia added, her forked tongue flicking out briefly. Astra shook her head, her long pointed ears lowering slightly. "No, just thinking we're not that different." It wasn't entirely untrue. Astra's species, the Striders, did bear some resemblance to humans. With two purple eyes, a nose, and hair above their heads, their faces weren't so different, except for the long pointed ears and blue skin covered in black dots. These patterns revealed much about individual Striders. Astra's particular combination indicated a bold, fearless personality with a propensity for taking risks and acting on impulse. Quite ironic for someone imprisoned because she was caught stealing the ancestral treasure of the Zodarians. Still standing at the cell door, watching the human settle into his cell across the pit, Astra heard Cordelia's voice once more. "How long have you been watching? Don't tell me you've got the death world fever or something." Astra waved a dismissive hand. "I'm only thinking of the time I stole a valuable briefcase from a human." She paused, then added, "A rich human, though, not a broken soldier like that one." Cordelia's head jerked up with interest. "Seriously?" she asked, as she always did when Astra mentioned anything related to her previous job success. How do you know that one's a soldier? Cordelia's head retreated to the bed, now resting on a pillow. Astra gestured toward the human. Look at his clothes, the fabric, the cut. Rich humans dress in white and black, elegant materials. This one is still in uniform. He was probably arrested for getting into a fight with some important Zodarian in a bar. She chuckled. Humans aren't very good at respecting noble hierarchy. Cordelia laughed, then yawned widely, her jaw unhinging slightly. That's true for us as well, or we wouldn't be here to begin with. True, Astra agreed, still watching the human. She was about to poke fun at Cordelia for being arrested after mistakenly trashing a Zodarian spacecraft, thinking it belonged to her previous mate, when she noticed her friend had fallen asleep. After witnessing it countless annoying times, she still couldn't believe how some reptilians could switch off suddenly and remain still for hours. Retreating from the cell door to a corner, she felt a twinge of envy for her friend, who would kill boring hours so easily every day, even after sleeping a full night. Astra settled against the wall, her gaze still fixed on the human across the pit. He seemed to be examining every inch of his cell, methodically checking the corners, the bed, the small washing unit. Smart. Looking for weaknesses, for escape routes. Not that he'd find any, just like she hadn't. Suddenly, the human looked up, directly at her. Their eyes met across the vast empty space between their cells. He smiled, a small, calculating expression, and his mouth moved. Then, impossibly, a voice spoke in her head. Hey, want to get out of here? Astra froze. The voice had come through her translator implant, the device most spacefaring species had implanted to facilitate communication. But that was impossible. The cells blocked all artificial communications. That was part of their design, to prevent precisely this type of interaction between prisoners. She didn't reply, her mind racing. How was this possible? As far as she knew, no artificial communication could cross the cell walls. The Zodarians had made sure of that. Was she hallucinating? Had isolation finally gotten to her after only 3 months? The human was still looking at her, waiting. How is this possible? She whispered aloud, barely audible, ignoring his question about getting out. A flicker of excitement built inside her at the thought of breaking prison rules somehow. To her surprise, the human replied immediately. I've always been good with tech, he said, the words appearing in her mind through the translator. My friends consider me a sort of tech wizard. So this was real. A grin spread across Astra's face, not because of the offer to escape, which she utterly didn't believe, but because she had someone else to talk to besides Cordelia. Oh, really? She said in a playful tone, leaning forward. And how exactly do you propose we get out of here? She made air quotes with her clawed fingers. She knew how to communicate with his species. She had to learn that to successfully steal from them. The robotic guards supervise our every move. Even when we're allowed out of our cells to access the tower's outside rims for sunlight and meals, we're at the mercy of the all-seeing eye every moment we step outside our cells. Every interaction is monitored and controlled within seconds. There's no room to attempt anything. The human just laughed at her assessment, the sound strange and echoey through the implant. I already told you, I'm a sort of tech wizard. I have all the tools I need to take control of the prison systems. I just need a little help from you. Astra laughed back at him. You're quite pretentious for your first day in prison, she said. Where do you keep these tools? How are you able to keep them during processing? She could see him readjusting on his bed across the pit, laughing a bit. It took a while before he responded. Earth inmates at least have the courtesy not to ask certain questions, he finally said. But most of it is just a hidden implant in my brain, just like yours, Astra, only better. Astra stiffened. Her name. He said her name. This human not only knew the details of her implant, but also knew who she was. Don't look so surprised, the human continued, obviously noting her reaction. Your thefts are notorious. There are few in the galaxy who don't know your name and where you ended up for all you did. The great Astra, who stole the Zodarian ancestral crystal and nearly got away with it. To Astra, that wasn't exactly an insult. She was, even if just a little, proud of all she had accomplished. She had never stolen from the poor, only taking a share of the pie from those who had too much. The Zodarian ancestral crystal had been her most ambitious target, and her downfall. She smiled, taking the comment as a compliment. "And your name?" she asked. "I know better than to work with someone truly evil. You'll have to convince me you're not a murderer or something worse before we talk about working together on anything." He laughed. The sound strangely warmed through the implant. "Weird that even someone like you has some sense of morality." After a long pause, he added, "You can call me Alex, and I'm innocent of any crime." It was Astra's turn to laugh. "Everyone says they're innocent here," she said. "The Zodarians can be unfair, but they still need a solid reason to arrest people without causing a diplomatic incident." The human, Alex, walked to his cell door and looked her in the eye from across the pit. She sat against the hard wall while he stood there, his posture confident despite his surroundings. "I'm here on purpose," he said, his voice serious now. "I punched a few Zodarians because I wanted to be here. I need to rescue a friend who was caged." "What friend?" Astra asked, immediately curious. What did they do to end up here? Alex shook his head. "That's classified. I'm on a mission for Earth, and I can't tell you more. It's a secret." Astra snorted. "That's not enough to convince me to work with you." She was lying this time, pressing him because she thought he would give in if she pushed hard enough. He didn't. "Well," he said with a shrug, "I guess I'll need to find someone else to help me." Then he went silent, turning away from the door. In that brief moment of silence, Astra panicked. She had 2 decades ahead of her in this place. How stupid would it be to refuse this opportunity, however small the chance of success, just because of her interest in getting involved in someone else's business? Thinking better of it, perhaps it was even preferable if she didn't know his goal. She had enough problems of her own, and there was no need to get tangled up in alien affairs. "Wait!" she said loudly, then immediately lowered her voice, glancing at the sleeping Cordelia. "I want to get out of here. You don't need to find anyone else. There's no one better than me in this prison for whatever you need. Half the other prisoners are brutes, and the other half are too soft to do things right." Alex turned back to the door, a smile spreading across his face. But his expression immediately froze when the all-seeing eye slithered into view, its massive pupil contracting as it scanned the area. Without hesitation, Alex pretended to act normally, returning to his bed and picking up the standard-issue tablet that came with every cell. Astra remained where she was, being very good at not attracting attention to herself. She knew exactly what to do without being told. She stared blankly at the wall, as if lost in thought, not looking in Alex's direction at all. Eventually, the tentacle carrying the all-seeing eye retreated to survey another cell. Only then did Alex speak again, slowly, with a professorial tone. "I can take control of all robots and use them to open all cells at once, creating chaos that we can use to escape." "What's the catch?" Astra asked immediately. There was always a catch. "To do that, I need to physically extract the access codes from the main chip of one of the correctional robots," he explained. "And I need someone else to steal that chip. That someone would be you." Astra was shocked by the plan. "It would never work," she said, shaking her head. "All the robots are part of a unified network that shares their sights and hearing. It's impossible to attack any of them without being captured by the others." Alex just stood and leaned against his cell door, his face exhibiting a not-so-subtle smile. By this point, Astra had already grasped enough of his personality to be sure he had a solution in mind. She smiled herself, glancing at her sleeping friend on the top bunk. For once, Cordelia was missing something interesting as she slept. "I'll create the opportunity for you to steal the chip," Alex finally said. "All eyes and ears will be focused on me." "And how do you intend to do this?" Astra asked, her voice betraying her high expectations. Alex pointed with his finger to another cell, a few rows to the right of Astra's. "I'll punch that big guy in the face and cause a huge commotion." Astra trembled in awe. "The Tragorian?" she asked, referring to the enormous reptilian with 4 arms who was notorious for his violent outbursts. "The one who bit off another prisoner's arm last month?" Alex just nodded. A familiar kind of excitement emerged inside of Astra, the same feeling she had experienced before every job, the chance that things could go wrong, the thrill that made her feel alive. Despite what she felt, she shook her head. That won't be enough to distract the guards. The Trogrian might be big, but the robots will subdue him in seconds. "I know," Alex said, and his finger slowly pointing toward 5 other cells. "I know exactly what to say to those guys to make them explode in a fit of rage as well." Astra looked at her own clawed hand, which was trembling slightly. Without looking at him, she said, "You'll take a beating. It will hurt a lot." "I know," he replied calmly, "but the guards will save me before I'm killed. They're programmed to preserve life." Astra finally stood, meeting his gaze across the pit. "I agree," she said firmly. 20 years or a bit more if this fails won't make a difference for me. And you likely have way more to lose than I do, so I'm certain you believe this plan can work." She gave a small bow, a gesture from her home world. "You can count on the great Astra as your partner in crime this time." "So, about the details," Alex began. This was the start of a long conversation that lasted hours, during which Alex explained exactly what she needed to do to steal the chip and even the details of how she could transfer it to him afterward. He described the specific model of correctional robot she should target, the exact location of the chip, and how to remove it without damaging the delicate circuitry. "The key is timing," Alex emphasized. "When I start the fight, you'll have approximately 10 seconds before the secondary response team arrives. The first responders will focus on subduing the Trogrian and me. There will be no eyes on you. That's your window." "And once I have the chip?" Astra asked. "Keep it concealed until meal distribution tomorrow," Alex replied. "They don't scan us during the process. Too many bodies moving at once. You hide it on the table. I'll get it from there." Astra nodded. It was simple, elegant even. The kind of plan she appreciated. "What about the eye?" she asked, glancing upward. "I'll handle that when I have the access codes," Alex said with confidence. "Trust me." Hours later, when the cell doors finally opened for the daily exercise period, Astra left the doorframe with a new sense of purpose. She exchanged a knowing look with the human across the pit and ignored Cordelia's words behind her. "What are you up to, Astra?" her cellmate called after her. "You've got that look, the one that always means trouble." Astra just smiled. Trouble was exactly what she and the human had in mind. And for the first time in 3 months, she felt truly alive again. As she stepped onto the narrow walkway that lined the pit, she caught Alex's eye one more time. He nodded slightly, and in that moment, Astra knew that everything was about to change. For better or worse, the monotony of prison life was over. The game had begun. Astra reached the narrow circular platform in front of her cell, joining the trickle of prisoners being led outside for their scheduled time in the sun. There were no more exchanges of glances now. Her goal was to join the crowd and disappear in plain sight, a skill she had learned from a young age. Before she became the notorious thief known across half the galaxy, she had been a simple pickpocket on the streets of her home planet, melting into crowds and vanishing with valuables before their owners even noticed they were gone. She only kept track of Alex through quick glances with the corner of her eye. Her main focus was on the position of the robots guiding them outside through a door in the wall. She tailed one particular unit from a distance, not too close, not too distant. All she had to do for now was keep herself in position and wait for her opportunity. Nothing to lose, but a lot to gain, just the way she liked it. Alex advanced ahead. She could see his eyes aimed at the Trogrian, and an instinct in the back of her mind was already telling her he was serious. There would be no hesitation. He would act when it was time to, with absolute commitment. The correctional robot ahead of her guided the procession through the thick walls of the prison tower. Astra followed, keeping her head down, appearing docile and uninterested. Just another prisoner resigned to her fate. The corridor was long and narrow, forcing them to walk in a single file, and the robot's metallic footsteps echoed against the hard surfaces. As they emerged outside, the Zodarian sun, usually something Astra loved, suddenly became a distraction. The bright purplish light made her squint painfully. The brief moment her eyes took to adapt to the outside was reason enough for her heartbeat to increase. These few seconds of vulnerability were dangerous. She needed to see clearly to act when the time came. Slowly, her eyes adapted to both the light and the gentle airflow that the outside provided. The outer rim was one of the many similar floors circling the prison tower, this particular level so high that all she could see of the planet below was just a layer of fog, a typical day on the Zodarian home world. The massive structure extended both above and below as far as she could see, a perfect example of the Zodarians' architectural prowess and their commitment to containing those who broke their laws. The scenery vanished from her mind when her eyes found Alex, already positioning himself in front of the huge Trogrian who stood nearly twice his size. The hulking reptilian was sitting alone, his 4 arms flexing restlessly as he consumed his ration. His scaled skin was a patchwork of scars from countless fights, both before and during his imprisonment. A thrill coursed through Astra's body, making her fingers become fluid in anticipation. This familiar feeling, the rush before a job, made her feel truly alive. She carefully positioned herself near her target robot, ensuring she had a clear path to it when chaos erupted. It didn't take long. Hell broke loose the moment Alex locked eyes with 5 furry aliens across the platform and called out something about their mothers, only to immediately punch the Trogrian square in the face. The blow connected with surprising force, making the big creature stagger for a brief moment that seemed to stretch forever. The Trogrian's yellow eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with rage. The commotion that followed was immediate and explosive. Screams erupted across the platform, food trays went flying. The Trogrian roared, a deafening sound that reverberated through the entire level, and lunged at Alex with all 4 arms extended. The 5 furry aliens Alex had insulted joined the fray, their high-pitched wailing adding to the chaos as they threw themselves into the fight. Astra remained hyper-aware of the line of sight of every guard around. Her quick hands, the hands of a thief, were poised and ready, waiting for just the right moment to act, to take what didn't belong to her but was about to. The correctional robots moved closer to the fight, their eyes nowhere close to focusing on her. Just as Alex had predicted, they prioritized the immediate threat, leaving her target momentarily isolated as a move to assist. She took a step forward and struck with grace. Her clawed hands found the opening in her target robot's neck on the first attempt, hitting the vulnerable joint Alex had described. The metal gave way with a satisfying crunch, and her fingers located the chip immediately, her claws severing the cable just as Alex had instructed. The robot didn't even register the attack before she had completed her task, its optic sensors still focused on the brawl. With great smoothness, Astra slipped the chip into her mouth and seamlessly blended with the crowd, pretending to be watching the robots end the fight. Only then did she notice that one of the robots had been lost in the chaos. Her target now slumped against the railing, its head hanging at an unnatural angle. The lights along the platform began to blink red, and warnings in multiple languages blared from hidden speakers. Attention all prisoners, return to your cells immediately. Failure to comply will result in severe punishment. It was easy for Astra to completely ignore Alex now, pretending to be just another scared prisoner returning to her cell. She joined the crowd of inmates rushing back inside, quickly finding her way back to her cell, where Cordelia was staring at her with narrowed eyes, as if she could tell Astra had a hand in the chaos. "What happened out there?" Cordelia hissed. "The alarms never go off like this." Astra shrugged, casually transferring the chip from her mouth to her hand without Cordelia noticing. Some human picked a fight with a Trogrian. Complete madness. She decided she would explain the plan to her friend tomorrow, when the dust from the fight had settled and she could be sure of their chances of success. She wouldn't leave Cordelia in the pit, and she would use the advantage she had over Alex now that she possessed the chip in case he didn't agree to take Cordelia with them. But that was only if he was against it, something she wasn't sure he would be. "I think I saw one of the robots malfunction," she continued, feeding Cordelia a partial truth. "It just collapsed during the fight. Probably got hit by accident." Cordelia was about to press for more details when they both fell silent, watching as Alex was brought back to his cell by the robotic guards. Astra felt a twinge of something uncomfortable at the sight of blood flowing from his nose and the pain evident in his movements. They had beaten him worse than she'd expected. After the guards departed, Cordelia kept trying to talk to her, asking questions about the human and why he'd start such a pointless fight. But Astra remained silent in her corner of the cell, her back pressing against the wall. She was waiting, knowing his voice would come soon. As predicted, it came. "Did you get it?" "Who do you think you're talking to?" she replied simply. Neither of them spoke for a while, and it was Astra who broke the silence, her lips ready for a fight when she asked, "Can I take Cordelia with us?" Such readiness proved useless when he agreed immediately. "I have nothing against taking someone like her. The more chaos during our escape, the better our chances." Astra was pleasantly surprised. "Thank you," she said, meaning it, this time feeling a little bad for her demands. The human had taken a serious beating to create this opportunity, and here she was making additional requests. The night passed with remarkably little conversation between them, mostly because the all-seeing eye was extremely agitated, very watchful of her cell in particular. Perhaps some algorithm in it knew that not many in the prison could have stolen that chip, yet there wasn't enough data for it to act decisively, just enough to direct the eyes of every guard toward her cell far more frequently than before. She hid the chip very well in her prison uniform, not touching it once all night. She even spent some time in her bed, not glancing at Alex's cell, just trying to get some rest. The adrenaline from the theft had worn off, leaving her exhausted but too wired to sleep properly. When morning came, Alex's voice appeared in her mind again. "I'm not comfortable with transferring the chip today," he said. "There are too many eyes on you." Still protected by her blankets, she laughed softly. "We can wait a few days. I've been here 3 months already. What's a few more days?" Days passed in a blink, yet somehow slower than before. There was no sign of security lessening even 1 week after the incident. Though the eye's focus directly on her had diminished, she still had a feeling the all-seeing eye was paying more attention to her than the others. She got tired of waiting on the 8th day and contacted Alex. "Today's the day we exchange the chip," she said firmly. "I can't wait anymore. The days don't pass, and the anticipation is killing me." He agreed after a moment's consideration. "It's probably as safe as now as it's going to get, but we need another strategy for the transfer. The guards are still keeping a close watch on both of us." Astra had a brilliant idea, one that made her smile to herself. "When the cell opens tomorrow, time your exit exactly 5 minutes after the doors unlock," she instructed Alex. "I have a plan." "What kind of plan?" he asked. "You'll see," she replied, refusing to elaborate further. It was partially an irrational behavior, she knew, but it wasn't rational behavior that had gotten her in here to begin with. She had a feeling everything would go well, and one thing Astra always did was trust her feelings. The next day, when the cell doors opened, Astra and Cordelia left immediately and together. Cordelia was even more obvious than Alex about what Astra had in mind, and the reptilian couldn't understand why Astra said she would return to her cell exactly 4 minutes after having reached the outer ring. Why go outside just to come back in? Cordelia asked, baffled. "Are you hiding something from me, Astra?" Still, Cordelia followed her back, as if she could read that something wasn't right in Astra's behavior. Astra was undeterred by her questions, approaching the door that would take them inside at the exact time that Alex was leaving his cell, moving toward the outside. The moment they were side by side in the narrow corridor, she grabbed him by the collar and kissed him deeply, ignoring his surprise and transferring the small chip to his mouth. His eyes widened in genuine surprise, exactly the convincing reaction she wanted, and she kissed him a bit longer before finally pulling away. "I can't stop thinking about you after that fight," she announced loudly, lying to everyone in the vicinity, including a curious-eyed tentacle that had slithered closer to investigate. "The way you stood up to the Trogrian! Oh, I've never seen such courage!" She looked around at the shocked faces of the other prisoners and guards, reinforcing her act. "Why is everyone surprised? This is hardly the first time something like this had happened here." She gestured between herself and Alex. "What's the problem if our species are different?" She got exactly the reaction she wanted from the robot guards. Instead of conducting a body search on either of them, they all initiated what prisoners jokingly called the Forbidden Love Protocol. Suddenly, both Alex and Astra were being guided back to their respective cells, with many robots alerting them that from now on, they were required to keep their distance from each other at all times, and that further contact would result in punishment. Was that really necessary? Alex's voice came through the translator once they both were back in their cells. Astra grinned. "It worked, didn't it? Besides, it was fun watching you squirm." Astra was alone in her cell for a while. She wasn't avoiding eye contact with Alex, but he himself was. She thought of a joke to break the tension, but before she could transmit it, Cordelia entered their cell, looking deep into Astra's eyes. "You've got death world fever," Cordelia stated flatly. "I've seen it before. You wouldn't be the first here." Astra stole a glance at Alex's cell and finally explained the plan to Cordelia, denying any death world fever and saying that tonight all cells would open and that she and the human had a plan to get out of here. Cordelia's surprise was evident in the way her scales rippled, changing color slightly. "You're actually serious," she said, sitting heavily on the lower bunk. "You're going to attempt a prison break with the human you just met?" Astra nodded. "And you're coming with us." To her shock, Cordelia shook her head and embraced Astra. "I'm not coming with you," she said softly. "I only have a few more months on my sentence before I'm free. I wouldn't risk an escape when I can walk out the front door." Astra pulled back, studying her friend's face. Are you sure? It's going to be chaos out there. A perfect cover. I'm sure, Cordelia replied. But I wish you luck, my friend. You were never meant for a place like this anyway. None of us are. Later, there was an awkward communication with Alex, tinged with a slightly awkward tone that Astra hadn't entirely expected. It will just be you, me, and your mysterious friend who's going out, she explained, describing Cordelia's decision. She doesn't want to risk it with so little time left on her sentence. Smart reptile, Alex commented. Get ready for tonight. Once I upload the virus, we'll only have a short window before the backup systems engage. The night was calm, and Astra and Cordelia had already exchanged their goodbyes and a promise to meet again outside a few months in the future. Take care of things until you're out, Astra said, gesturing to the few personal items she'd accumulated during her stay. I will, Cordelia promised. Try not to get yourself killed out there. Just before the prison's artificial night cycle reached its deepest point, Alex's voice came through the translator one final time. Ready or not, here we go. All cell doors suddenly opened with a simultaneous hiss, catching the night shift of robotic guards completely by surprise. As previously discussed, Astra and Alex exited immediately, starting a trend as other prisoners realized what was happening. The robots are compromised! Alex shouted, his voice echoing through the pit. They can't stop us all! He grabbed one of the disoriented robots and, with surprising strength, hurled it over the railing into the deep pit below. The action sent a shockwave through the watching prisoners, who quickly realized the robots were moving sluggishly, their responses delayed by the virus Alex had uploaded. Chaos broke loose as the trend finally consolidated. Prisoners from all levels joined in, grabbing robotic guards and throwing them into the pit in quick succession. Alarms blared, red lights flashed, but the usual swift response from the security system was absent. Astra and Alex ran together from opposite sides of the pit, fighting through the chaos, only to meet right in front of the all-seeing eye, which seemed to be sparking erratically, certain because of something the human had done. The eye's massive pupil contracted and expanded wildly, as if struggling to focus. Without hesitation, Astra used her claws, striking right in the middle of the optic sensor. Alex followed with a powerful punch, sending it careening away, buying just enough time for them to reach the elevator doors that normally only the guards could access. Alex pressed his palm against the reader, and to Astra's surprise, the doors opened immediately. They tumbled inside just as the damaged eye reoriented itself and began moving back toward them. Before it reached them, the doors closed, and now they were alone, away from the chaos, starting what would be an awkward journey to the distant ground floor. The elevator's soft noise was the only sound as they descended, its internal lights blinking occasionally, after effects of Alex's virus in the main system. Astra leaned against the wall, trying to process the mental state she found herself in. She was feeling that thrill she enjoyed so much, but this time it was different than the other times, more intense even than when she had been captured. There was something about this human, about the way he had planned everything so meticulously, that sparked something in her she hadn't felt before. For the first time in recent years, Astra couldn't find the words she wanted. She allowed the silence to endure as they descended, watching the floor numbers tick down on the display. Hundreds of floors passed in silence, the journey seeming both endless and too short. Finally, the elevator slowed, coming to a stop at the lowest floor. The doors opened to reveal an empty lobby. Alex's virus had apparently cleared their path of guards. An autonomous vehicle will arrive first, before the fresh authorities and backup, Alex said confidently as they hurried across the polished floor toward the main entrance. We're safe now. The plan can't go wrong at this point. Astra still said nothing. They stood side by side just inside the entrance, watching through the transparent doors as a typical Zodarian vehicle approached, its hover pads glowing softly in the darkness. Alex rushed to the vehicle as soon as it settled on the ground. Suddenly, finding the courage to move, Astra entered the vehicle from the other door, and they found themselves in the front seat alone. Again, her heart beat faster than ever. Immersed in that familiar yet strange thrill, she pulled his collar again, this time not acting. She looked into his eyes for a moment, searching for the same electricity she felt, then kissed him. She did what she wanted, with no care for the consequences, just as she had done all her life. He kissed her back, just for a moment, but something was wrong. The feeling was wrong in a way she couldn't explain. She felt alone suddenly, then it clicked. Where was that friend he was supposed to have rescued? She pulled back abruptly. "Wait," she said, frowning. "Where is your friend? The one you came here to rescue?" There was no reply, and before she could ask anything else, metal cuffs closed around her wrists, binding her to the vehicle and leaving her speechless. Only then did he speak. "I lied," Alex said, his voice flat. "There was never any friend." He said nothing more, letting a feeling of betrayal emerge within her, followed by explosive anger. "You used me!" She screamed, struggling against the restraints. "You lying, manipulative asshole!" She cursed him in 3 different languages, her translator struggling to keep up with the invectives. "I helped you escape! I risked everything!" She felt worse at herself than at him. How could she, the greatest thief of this half of the galaxy, fall for something like this? She had been played, used as a tool in someone else's plan, exactly what she had always prided herself on avoiding. With tears flowing, she finally asked, "Why? Why would you do this?" Alex started the vehicle, and it moved smoothly into the maze of tunnels beneath the prison complex. He drove in silence for several minutes, the only sounds Astra's ragged breathing and the vibration of the engine. Finally he spoke. "You stole a briefcase from humanity once," he said, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "It contained the FDL communication codes from the Hygrian Empire, a species that might declare war on humanity at any time." His knuckles whitened as he gripped the steering wheel. "You stole that, and that's why you're bound now, because many lives are on the line, and you're the cause of it." The implications ran through Astra's mind like wildfire. She had indeed stolen something from humanity, but she hadn't known what it was. She'd been hired to acquire a specific briefcase for a substantial amount of credits, a simple job with an excellent payday. "That? I didn't know what it was," she tried to explain. "I was just doing a job. Someone hired me to steal a briefcase. I never knew what was inside." He cut her off. "I don't want explanation, and neither does Earth. What's done is done. The damage is already spreading." Astra finally realized that her fate was in his hands now. "What happens to me?" she asked quietly. "Will I be executed?" He smiled grimly, accelerating the vehicle as they passed multiple Zodarian Authority vehicles rushing toward the prison. That would be the easy way out, wouldn't it? The vehicle emerged from the tunnels onto a dark landing pad where a sleek ship waited, its engines already primed for departure. Alex pulled the vehicle to a stop beside it. "Are you going to torture me?" Astra asked, her voice barely audible. Alex shook his head as he released her cuffs from the vehicle, though her wrists remained bound together. "We're about to board the ship," he said, "and our destination is the current whereabouts of that briefcase. You're going to help me fix the mess you made. Together, we're going to steal the briefcase again and give it back to humanity, where it belongs." Her heart nearly stopped. "And after?" she asked cautiously. He laughed, the sound lacking any real humor. "That's bold of you to assume we'll succeed." Then he added more seriously, "Only time will tell what happens after." He guided her toward the ship's ramp, his hand firm on her arm. Behind them, the prison tower was barely visible in the distance, emergency lights flashing throughout its structure. They captured a human soldier, Astra muttered to herself as they boarded the ship and lost the entire prison. Alex glanced at her. That was the easy part, he said. What comes next will be the real challenge. The ship's ramp closed behind them, sealing them together in what Astra realized would be either a death sentence or the greatest heist of her life. Strangely, despite everything, she felt that familiar thrill returning, just an insignificant trace of it. The ship lifted off, disappearing into the Zodarian night sky, leaving behind a prison in chaos and carrying two unlikely partners toward an uncertain future, one seeking justice, the other seeking nothing but redemption.